Wait a minute, that's not right.
One big surprise of an entrant finds his way to the finals of the IC tournament. The ref makes an insanely bad call in a number one contenders match, and CM Punk has a bloody bad idea thinking he can get one win and go straight to number one contender. Okay, in the news! And the news indeed, we had Monday Night Raw from Denver, Colorado, coming out of Bash in Berlin, and we will lead off with two Intercontinental title number one contender tournament matches. First off with Dominic Mysterio taking on Dragon Lee and the returning Ilya Dragunov. Well, there was a lot here, so let's just knock out a couple of highlights. We had Dragunov early on landing a triple release German suplex in which Dom just happened to be able to grab Dragon Lee, so Dragunov turned that third German into a double German suplex. Well, Dom surely had Carlito on standby, and Carlito took his chance to take out his former LWO member, Dragon Lee, and he pushed Lee off of the top rope, so of course Damian Priest came out to try to even the score, and after taking out Carlito, he chased after Dom, making Dom leave the match and turning it into a one-on-one. So Dragunov and Dragon Lee tore the house down for the next several minutes, and Lee reversed a Constantine special with an armbar where he was able to take Dragunov to the ground and then hit a sit-out powerbomb. However, Dragunov had the final say with a big Constantine special to get the win and become a finalist for the tournament. So for Dragunov, this was his first match in a month and a half, and he goes back to 500 in all singles matches at 5-5. Well, for Dragon Lee, this was actually his first singles match in 2.5 months, but he's now just 1-4 in all singles matches. For Dom, maybe actually a tough loss for him this time, but I think we know that was just because he had Carlito ready to go to try to help him out. Nonetheless, he still falls to 1-9 in all singles matches. In the other tournament match, we had Braun Strowman making a surprising return after Bronson Lee was the one that was declared medically ineligible to compete. So Strowman went and convinced Adam Pearce that he could go in this match. So even though he was still wincing in pain and had on a lot of kinesio tape, well, Pearce said he was good to go. So he was the one to take on Sheamus and Ludwig Kaiser. Well, once the bell rang, Kaiser immediately rolled out of the ring, but Sheamus was not going to let that chance stop him to attack his rival, and those two brawled at ringside until Strowman landed a freight train on both of them. And then as Strowman went for a second freight train on Kaiser, he sidestepped him and Strowman crashed through the barricade. So after several minutes and a commercial break, Strowman was still on the ground when Kaiser went for that running drop kick onto the steel steps, but Strowman was able to pick up a chair and throw it and hit Kaiser with it. So getting back in the ring, he was then able to land a chokeslam on Sheamus, but Sheamus surprisingly kicked out and smartly started attacking those injured ribs, landing a 10 beats of the Balron and then a kneecap to knock Strowman out of the ring. So Kaiser came back in and landed a Kaiser roll and set up for that DTO reverse suplex, but Sheamus was able to counter that and landed a devastating brogue kick that surely would have gotten the win, except that Pete Dunne came out of the crowd, grabbed Sheamus's legs and pulled him outside the ring, then hit him several times with the shillelagh. So in that distraction, Kaiser got caught up, Strowman came from behind, hit that running power slam, and became the number one contender with that win. So for Strowman, he goes to 4-2-1 in all singles matches, while Kaiser continues to struggle in his return, dropping to 0-4 in all matches and falling to 3-5-1 in singles competition. While Sheamus, he's been good in one-on-one action, winning 4 out of the last 5, but he's just 6-5 in all singles matches. Well, while we had 2 matches to try to get to a number 1 contenders match, we did have one number 1 contenders match, and it was for the Women's Tag Team Championships between Damage Control and the Unholy Union of Fire and Dawn, who just lost the titles to Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair, who would watch this one from ringside. So it was a pretty even and spirited bout for the most part, but things turned for the worse when Kyrie attempted an insane elbow from the top rope onto the floor to try to hit Isla Dawn, but Isla yanked Bianca, and this threw Kyrie completely off, and as she was able to connect somewhat on Bianca, well, she ended up hitting her head up against the announce table, causing her to become woozy and bloodied, which Jade was not so happy about Bianca getting taken out, so she punched Kyrie in the face while the referee was watching, so the ref somehow let this go and did not call for the disqualification to give Damage Control the win. So, in this distraction, which you can understand why Io was distracted, Isla then yanked Io's neck into the bottom rope, which allowed Fire and Dawn to land the gory special to pin Io and become the number 1 contenders. So with quite a bit of help from the ref, we have Fire and Dawn back to being the number 1 contenders as they go to 2-4 in traditional tags, while Io and Kyrie lose their first traditional tag, going to 2-1. But more importantly, we just hope Kyrie didn't suffer a concussion or anything worse with that blood on her head. In a women's singles match, we actually had a returning Zelina Vega who missed an entire month due to Shayna Baszler kicking in her already injured elbow. Well, Zelina got a crack at Shayna here, and she came out aggressively, most notably hitting a tornado DDT followed by a moonsault. But, of course, Zoe then tried to distract Zelina, so Zelina decided to hit a 169 on her, and then followed that up with a Meteora on Sonya, who was not really doing anything at ringside. Nonetheless, Zelina rolled back into the ring, and Shayna had time to recover, and she immediately hit her big knee, and Zelina was out, and Shayna picked up the win, which, amazingly enough, is Shayna's first singles win in almost an entire year, when her last win was on September 11th, 2023, losing 11 matches in a row in the meantime, but she is now 1-3 in one-on-one action in 2024. And for Zelina, even though she got a win in her last match against Zoe, she falls to 1-5 in one-on-one action. Well, we also had a 6-person mixed tag team match to open the show when American Made took on the Alpha Academy, and this one was completely chaotic. So we just want to note a couple highlights here, with Maxine landing a crossbody on all 3 members of American Made who were on the floor. Then later, much to Chad Gable's chagrin, Otis was able to land a caterpillar, but Brutus got some revenge by hitting a Brutus ball. But after Maxine was able to get a tag and start taking it to Ivy, including that fisherman suplex that she likes so much, she went for a reverse caterpillar, but since Gable had already seen one caterpillar, he got up onto the apron and distracted Maxine, but she wasn't having any of it and hit a big roundhouse to knock him to the floor. However, this distraction gave Ivy the chance to sneak up from behind, hit a roundhouse kick of her own, and then lock in the Dragon Sleeper, where Maxine had to quickly tap out and give American Made the victory. So this was, of course, the first 6-person mixed tag for both groups, but Chad Gable took the mic afterwards and immediately called out Uncle Howdy and challenged the Wyatt Six to an 8-person mixed tag match next week. So I guess Uncle Howdy was more than happy to accept this, so we will see this next week, and we just suddenly do mixed tags all of the time now, apparently. Huh, who knew? But speaking of mixed tags, Kicking off the show was Rhea Ripley celebrating her mixed tag victory, so she called out Liv Morgan for a women's title opportunity. But instead of Liv, of course, Dom had to be the one to come out. But Dom said that Liv was not scared, so Liv accepted the challenge. And after a little bit of a back and forth, with Dom trying to get Rhea caught unaware, well, Liv, of course, tried to make a sneak attack from behind, but Rhea knew it was coming somehow and landed a back elbow to stop her. So Dom then tried to leave the ring, but Rhea was able to grab his head and yank him back up onto the apron, but Liv was right there to push Rhea over the top rope and getting her feet caught between the ropes. And with Rhea just dangling there, Liv repeatedly kicked Rhea as Dom just pointed and laughed at her. Well, of course, Damian Priest came to the rescue and the lovers ran off into the crowd like the cowards that they are. So, unfortunately, the damage was done as Rhea suffered a bit of an injury that fortunately won't be long term, but nonetheless, she was in a walking boot and had a crutch for the rest of the night. So, Priest went to talk to Pierce about getting a match with the Judgment Day, and they would only accept if it were a tag match. So, of course, Rhea got to Jay, and he agreed to be Priest's tag team partner. So that finally takes us to the main event of the night. So let's just go right to the end where Jay tagged himself in and then hit super kicks against both Finn Balor and JD McDonough, and then speared JD as well. But as he went to the top rope to finish it off with a splash, Balor was able to distract the ref, and Liv came out and pulled out Jay's legs, causing him to get caught in the turnbuckle, which didn't look like it felt so very good. And this led to Balor hitting his trifecta of a sling blade, then dropkick into the corner and into the drop zone with a coup de grace. And then JD decided to put a little punctuation on it with a moonsault of his own, but perhaps this move is what cost them as Priest recovered just in time to break up the pin. But as Liv then decided to complain to the referee, well, Rhea's music hit and she hobbled on out down the ramp. But seeing this, Liv started laughing at Rhea. But Rhea had enough in her to hit Liv in the gut with the crutch and then swung a couple more times, but she missed. Nonetheless, Liv was able to get away and she ran out through the crowd. However, this distraction gave the opening for Jay and Priest as Jay landed a spear on Balor to knock him out of the ring, and then Priest hit a razor's edge on JD, with Jay finishing it off with an Uso splash to get a win. But of course, this is their first match together, so they're just 1-0. But for the Judgment Day, the tag team champions are now 0-2 with 0 title defenses since winning the title a couple of months ago, and they're just 1-3 in all traditional tags. So we certainly can't say that those two are fighting champions. And beyond the map for Raw, CM Punk celebrated his victory over Drew McIntyre in the strap match and then said it was time to get down to business, challenging Gunther for the World Heavyweight Championship, because we should all be so entitled to be able to win one match every 3,876 days and immediately get a title match. Come on, man. Come on, you gotta win a couple more matches than that. That's just ridiculous. That's just ridiculous. And apparently, Drew McIntyre agreed with that sentiment, because as Punk was celebrating on top of the announce table, he came out of the crowd and yanked Punk's feet off of the table and then continued to beat him down until Wade Barrett tried to talk some sense into him, but McIntyre was not going to listen and he claymored Punk on top of the announce table and then threw him back in the ring, landing another claymore, with officials then having to come out, but McIntyre would not stop as he ripped off the bracelet and was about to put it on his wrist, but decided otherwise and instead decided to rip it and break it apart. And of course, he then continued to hit one more Claymore until even more officials came out to finally get McIntyre to leave the ring so that medical personnel could come in and stretcher Punk to an ambulance. Well, when he just about got to that ambulance, McIntyre again jumped out from behind and he attacked Punk some more, bloodying Punk's face before the officials finally got McIntyre away and Punk was taken off to the hospital. Well, one man's loss is another man's gain because Sami Zayn then later also challenged Gunther, saying that true legends have used the IC title as a stepping stone to the World Heavyweight Championship, including Gunther himself. So Zayn said he was going to do the same thing and would beat Gunther yet again. But Gunther praised Zayn by saying that every time he gets knocked down, Zayn gets right back into the middle of the ring. But if the World Heavyweight Championship was the one thing that Zayn really wanted, Gunther's answer was no to that challenge. I have a feeling Sami's not exactly just going to call that the end of the story, but for right now, well, that's just where we're at. Speaking of challenges for titles, we had Braun Breaker interrupt an interview between Jackie Redmond and Jey Uso, and Breaker said that Jey should drop out of the tournament right now, giving him this one chance. But of course, Jey said no way, and that he was going to win the tournament and then beat Breaker for the title. And I just kind of think the Breaker should probably just let things play out and see if Jey can actually win this tournament first before he goes on the attack. But what do I know? And lastly, Jackie also interviewed Pete Dunne after Dunne attacked Sheamus with that shillelagh yet again, and Dunne said that he was just delivering a message to an old friend, to which Jackie made the obvious mistake to call Dunne Butch, and so Butch said not to call him that ever again. But he just walked away and let things go for now. And with that, let's go to STFs. And in tonight's STFs, we as always start with the Judgment Day edition, and this one was mostly Liv Morgan as she kicked off the show with a sneak attack on Rhea, but because we are pretty darn confident that Dom was involved as well, both Liv and Dom will get fines. And then at the end of the night, Liv yanked Jay's leg off of the top rope during the match, so Liv will pick up her second fine of the night. Well, Rhea, of course, wouldn't let that go, so she came out and hit Liv with the crutch, so she's also going to get a fine as well. PFC was also up to their usual tricks because after the match, they circled Zelina and ended up beating up her and Lyra Valkyria as well, who was just trying to help. So Sonya, Shayna, and Zoe will all get fines. During the women's #1 contender tag team match, Jade punched Kyrie after she landed somewhat the insane elbow on Bianca, so Jade will pick up a fine. And of course the big one is Drew McIntyre, who completely destroyed CM Punk, forcing him to go to the hospital with 2 separate attacks, first in the ring and then right beside the ambulance, so he will get a 1-month suspension for that. But in the fracas, he also pushed a WWE official out of the way, so that will cost him an additional 1-week suspension. And we'll end with a note by saying that Carlito and Pete Dunne both interfered in the IC tournament matches, but since those were both under triple threat rules, they were both allowed. So no STFs for either of them. The IC tournament finals are set after big wins by Dragunov and Strowman. The ref completely blows it for a bloody Kyrie as Fire and Dawn yet again become the #1 contenders. And speaking of blood, Drew McIntyre has some serious bad blood for CM Punk as he leaves on a stretcher in a bloody mess. I'm Dr. O'Kay, reporting on the WWE, where everything is okay.